Hey Steve, I just saw you pop up. Another Adelaide person just popped in.
It's good to invite your friends, probably from Australia. So,
Yeah, a
Got to have an
couple more
audience
Aussies.
somehow.
hi,
Aussie,
hello.
Aussie, Aussie.
What time is it now in Australia?
It's 8:30 in Adelaide. It'll be 9 p.m. in Sydney.
All right, yeah. You guys are always ahead of us. All right, so I think we can start, right? So welcome to the Innovation Cafe, Dan. It's a pleasure to have you here today. And I think you are our first guest from Australia, which is really cool. And I think we are going to talk about design sprints, which is a method I really enjoy. It's perfect to start a project, to start a movement towards innovation, and to learn a few techniques, probably from the design thinking world. And also, it's interesting to understand your perspective regarding remote and design sprints and how this new normal is working for you. So, welcome. Feel free to start presenting.
Thank you for the kind intro, Hugo, and for inviting me to present on the Innovation Cafe to share knowledge on our experience with remote design sprints and leading teams from strategy to prototype. Let me start with the format of today's talk. I'm going to begin by giving you some context on who we are and our shift to remote methods of working. I'll highlight how we've adapted the design sprint program. I'm going to assume the audience is aware of what design sprints are at a minimum level, or at least the concept of them. I'll share what we believe are the 3 key areas of the remote design sprint program to help successfully lead a team from saying to doing. And at the end of each topic, we'll conduct a chat storm in the chat window, so keep that open to give everyone a chance to share their experience, provide feedback, or ask questions. We'll end with final thoughts, questions, and I'll share where you can connect with us at More Space. There will be slides when we get into the meat of the sandwich, but let me start with what we do and who I am. So my name's Dan Levy. I'm principal and founder of More Space for Light. More Space for Light is an innovation and strategy consultancy. What does this mean? Well, our design-led approach to solving business problems helps leaders and teams overcome constraints related to strategy, product, service, or process. Our focus is often on creating new futures or experiences that are outside of BAU and are regarded as unknowns. This enables us to help organisations unlock new opportunities or reignite existing areas for growth and higher engagement. To do this, we work outside the lines with Tiger teams made up of subject matter experts from across the business to facilitate conversations, to gain alignment and focus for action. Action being rapid prototyping and pilot programs, or as we like to refer to as learning experiences. Semantics, but it lowers internal risk perception. So how do we do this? Well, our focus is as high upstream as possible. It starts with exploration to gather insights and an understanding through facilitation and designing workshop programs, to conducting users research and analysis, then to strategy, which involves consultation, planning and coaching. Finally, to design, which refers to rapid prototyping, designing pilot programs and service design. We're mainly known for our transformation programs, which include design sprints. Like many organisations impacted by COVID, we've had to adapt in our method of engagement, which has meant embracing the matrix and going remote, something I had previously felt reluctant about. We had dabbled with remote ways of working, whether conducting user interviews, meetings, or participating in the Global Virtual Design Sprint Initiative. However, after 3 intense months, we have been successful in adapting More Space to 100% remote. We are now in another transition phase back to the new normal. What this looks like is currently in its infancy. However, something we will bring with us as we transition is a strong remote capability. For example, our remote design sprint program, the focus for today. Before we dive into this, what is evident from the last few months of More Space is that we believe the leap to remote isn't that big, as we've proved and seen many others successfully demonstrate. Like the design thinking philosophy that we subscribe to, you learn by doing. As much of it is common sense, being mindful of your environment, whether it's people, tools, or mindsets, and being intentional with the workshop experiences you wish to create. As a result of applying this philosophy over the last few months, often under times of great stress, we believe there is value to the insights we intend to share today, and hope they offer practical tips to consider as part of your transformation programs. Also, as a caveat, what I am about to run through isn't concrete. As with everything we do at More Space, we are in a constant state of iteration. We are always looking to refine and improve. Take what you believe will work for you and adapt it to suit. So, to design sprints. So I'm going to give you a quick overview of what our process looks like. Something that we have always been conscious of when conducting design sprints is time. It is such an intensive application of working that we have found sometimes the process has been lacking in allowing people the time needed to process information to make decisions. By switching to remote, it has afforded us the opportunity to adapt the experience to address this issue. Now, without going into the detail, one of the ways we've addressed this is by conducting the program in 3 distinct stages, something we've done in the past. However, in the remote world, it has given us the opportunity to be more definitive in how we communicate this to clients. Stage 1 is sprint framing. This includes problem framing to align and define the opportunity, as well as start organising and assigning logistic duties. Onboarding the sprint team to introduce the design sprint program, the agenda, the tools such as Mural and Zoom, and finally asset creation, for example, personas, the map, and conducting stakeholder interviews. Stage 2 is the design sprint. This is conducted over 2 weeks because we run shorter workshops. Week 1 is to define the sprint criteria through to solution design and planning the prototype, sometimes 2. Week 2 is making the prototype, testing, and then the final debrief. And then stage 3 is showcasing. This is conducted by the organisation. We provide the package that enables them to introduce insights back into the business. For example, stakeholder presentations, and sometimes further prototype refinement and or user testing. And then 28 days later, something that has been inspired by one of my favourite films. It's like a 28-day later checking to ensure accountability of actions from the designer or project lead. This method of program delivery is allowing teams to maintain momentum and ensure a springboard to the wider business beyond the design sprint. Excuse me. The subject of this discussion, however, is to focus on one of the biggest challenges we've encountered with the program when adapting it to remote: prototyping. When the team shifts from talking to doing and committing to an idea, this is where the rubber really hits the road, especially with many design sprint programs that have the pressure of senior management coming to review and being test subjects in the final phase of the program. When you are together in a physical workshop, it is easier to coax people to transition and coach and critique, as you have the physical space to do this. You're all locked in a room. You can pick up the invisible cues and signals that are often hidden in Zoom. In the digital space, this doesn't seem so real. Worst case scenario for a sprint team member, they turn off their screen and go and hide under the guise of a fake meeting. So I'm going to share my screen now. And I apologise if this seems a bit clunky because I've minimised Zoom. So I'll just get Zoom back.
No worries, Dan. It's the nature of Innovation Cafe. This is an informal event, so
I've got you. No, it's cool. It's cool. So because I minimized the screen, I've never minimized the screen
Makes things
and
real.
then tried to share my screen before. All right, so that should be sharing. Cool. And then I just want to get rid of this bar here. I think we're good. All right. So what we found, all right, I'm going to take a sip of tea. I won't be a second. The Englishness of me coming through here, even though I'm an Aussie, apparently. Areas of what we found, and emphasis on the we, that there are 3 times in the design sprint that can really help overcome this challenge, or at least build confidence in making the leap from strategy to prototype. The start, during sprint framing, using this as a time to discuss constraints and concerns early. The switch, this generally happens as you enter the storyboard phase. Then the build, when the team has their head down and are in production mode. So let's dive into each of the points. I will stop at each stage and invite everyone to participate in a chat storm to share their challenges that they've found at similar stages in their transformation programs. So to start, excuse me, this is most relevant at problem framing. So just a quick question to everybody here. Who here conducts problem framing as part of their design sprint program? Just let me know in the oh, I'm not, you are not presenting, sharing, just, oh, I'm not, it says I am sharing, Hugo.
You are sharing your screen, yeah.
Yeah, am I sharing it or not?
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. It's perfect.
Oh, okay, I got somebody, oh, I see. So I'm out of date with your chat message. I told you.
Sorry, it was minutes ago. No worries.
Oh, okay. Okay, so first question: who here conducts problem framing as part of their design sprint program? Just let me know in the chat. Thanks, John. Does anybody do problem framing? Andy, thank you. Show me some love there. Awesome. Yes, from Sana. That's awesome. For those of you who don't, we have found it invaluable in getting senior stakeholders involved and their buy-in early on in the design process. Buy-in is essential if you wish for your transformation efforts to have legs beyond the program. Because as soon as you embark on this experience, you and the team are literally going dark, which means the team will be acting as a special ops team separated from the rest of the organisation, working at a different rhythm with little contact to the outside world of BAU for the duration of the program. Also, as a result from successfully conducting a problem framing session, you will gain a clear understanding of the challenge. There is nothing worse than wasting time early in a design sprint trying to agree on a problem that could have been resolved with a far more effective method. You will assemble your design sprint Titan team from across the organisation to tackle the challenge. You want to ensure you have the right people in the room to collaborate, not the favourites or people that have no experience of the issue, as well as identifying the people that are most impacted. They will provide a deeper understanding of the challenge and govern your design decisions. To learn and make real progress, you need to bring the people into the conversation that are effective most. You need the team to get in their shoes and change their worldview to ensure the basis of their decisions are through the eyes of these stakeholders. So I'm just going to throw this open to the chat at the moment. Does anybody have anything to add, anything I might miss, any key points of problem framing that they incorporate into their process?
Are you going to talk about, you mentioned here stakeholders, and sometimes it's very hard to convince the stakeholder to run the design sprint because it takes a team of around 7 people during a period of 4 to 5 days. Are you going to talk about that?
Not specifically capturing the stakeholders, and we can park this and we can talk about this at the end, because something that we do is, as part of a put, so to speak, is that the senior stakeholders are the people we run problem framing with, because as a result of problem framing, we can determine the right people to have in the room. So we look at problem framing at very much at a business level, because we want to link the opportunity up to the business strategy, and we want to make sure everybody is clear on the challenge and it's prioritized. Also, as a result of running problem framing, we'll get a number of different opportunities or challenges that we can then come back and do other design sprints on. I'm just reading what Andy put. I think defining the exam question, the opportunity, is so important to ensure that there is enough space to pivot, but not too much so as not to achieve a tangible outcome. That's fantastic. Did that answer your question, Hugo?
Yes, I have my own experience, and sometimes there's no formula. The first design sprint is difficult meaning when people don't know, we don't understand what this is, in particular in legacy organizations where they are really used to the project management world. They need to understand what is the outcome. They jump directly to the solution space. They don't understand the problem space, finding the right problem. So when I need to explain what is the double diamond, let's go back to design thinking fundamentals, I know the maturity is low, because typically managers, senior managers, they understand pretty well what a scope is, what an outcome is. They don't understand how designers solve problems. And this design sprint comes from the design thinking world, creative problem solving. So depending on the maturity level, sometimes I have to explain because the maturity is low. If the maturity is high, they already understand. It's a matter of adapting the sprint, the problem statement. Yeah. So thanks for the feedback.
No, that's cool. So we actually start the design sprint actually starts as soon as they sign the contract with. So we're already onboarding our partners as soon as they've decided this is something they're interested in embarking on. We bake problem framing in as part of it, and the problem framing is very much to just define what we are looking at. So we have kind of the essence. Sometimes we're a little bit more defined, but generally the purpose of problem framing is to get that alignment and to set everything up so we can hit the ground running. And that's enabled us to make, even though I say the remote design sprint lasts almost 2 weeks, that's because we're running shorter workshops. All right, I can answer more questions about that at the end. So I'll just keep going. So where we have started to play with problem framing, or how other people run problem framing, is by introducing a Premortem. We use this to discuss constraints that will prevent the ideas seeing the light of day beyond the program. We've found the Premortem is a great method to get senior leaders to acknowledge constraints and blockers that have prevented them from adopting a test and learn approach to problem solving in the past. It is really handy for us, as we can make a note of these and address the elephants in the room early, prior or during the design sprint. It is important that you capture everything and continuously revisit throughout the sprint, especially during the early stages when defining the sprint criteria, to gauge how much of a concern the issues recorded are. Also worth calling out are the push points in the organisation that will ensure that outcomes from the design sprint get oxygen beyond the program. This can be related to people, process, or tools that will help you gain an edge. Now, there's bonus points if someone in the room is named during this activity. So, in relation to activities, there's some suggested activity to tease out potential blockers during this stage of the program alongside the Premortem. They include note and vote. For those of you that are unfamiliar and never run a design sprint, it's really a super simple decision-making activity where lots of people come up with ideas, they curate those ideas to their best, present them, and then as a group you dot vote on what you feel the most important or most appropriate relevant ideas are. The impact versus effort matrix, which we've changed impact to disruption the effort matrix. It's always flexible, the different sides of that matrix, and that's to indicate the level of concern. And we've also found stakeholder mapping, and then mapping those stakeholders in a matrix by interest in the project and influence on the success of the project, really helpful. Again, I'm going to stop if anyone wants to add anything at this point or anyone has any questions. All right, I'm going to carry on. We're going to get to the second stage now, the switch. Now, every design sprint facilitator talks about the storyboard being a critical point in the design sprint. Regardless of how smooth the process has been, this is always where we encounter friction, no matter how unanimous the decision has been with the solution sketch. Spend time on the storyboard. We dedicate almost a whole session to the creation of the storyboard. Also, don't allow the group to be too ambitious with the prototype. You must refer back to the sprint criteria and ensure the narrative of the prototype will address this. And when I say ambitious, I mean you're not building the whole product. You're just building those points that relate back to the things you're testing. It is even worth sense checking and revisiting all of the sprint questions to ensure the ones that didn't seem relevant earlier, most likely in the parking lot, to see if they're better suited now. This is something we found at the end of the sprint that we wished we would have gone back and checked. We also start the storyboarding in an earlier session at the end of the speed critique. We do this to kickstart people's thinking beyond the surface level of concept design to the intended narrative of the prototype. You are only creating the prototype for test subjects to gain their feedback. Always keep your test subjects in mind that the design of the prototype should be relevant to what you wish to learn from them. Also, refer to potential pitfalls uncovered during the pre-mortem. What can you learn from to overcome potential pitfalls? What we found is that by effectively using any combination of the following sprint activities will help demystify the prototype build. First up, the storyboard hack. A quick 25-second overview of this activity. This is what we run at the end of the speed critique. In its essence, basically each member of the group quickly throws down a high-level narrative of the prototype from A to B on sticky notes. So starting point to the end point, maybe 8 different blocks, very high level. Then through a guided process, the group and then the decider consolidate to a single stream that will become the bones of the storyboard. That's when we finish the session, and it gives people a bit of time to decompress and process what that is and link it back to the solution sketch. Statement starters, or as you might refer to them as how might we's. Although these come a little earlier than the switch, they are still part of the transition process of understanding to concept design. A game changer for us has been getting people to 100x their ideas, then distilling them down by voting, is to challenge the group with the question, what has to be true? What has to be true? It's a really cool question that we asked once we've got the ones that are voted for. We push people to go above and beyond with their responses to how might we's. Then we bring them back to the dirt by getting them to consider the feasibility of their ideas. There is often a light bulb moment here for many as they realise that the seemingly impossible is achievable with what they already have. And then lightning demos. They are used in the sprint to create a collective inspiration board for other entities that have tackled some of or a similar issue. This is generated by the sprint team. Now, while getting the team to discuss the big idea, also ask them to do some research to see if they can uncover the early stages of the project, specifically if they had similar issues as called out in the pre-mortem, to make the challenge more relatable and less scary. If not, you can encourage the group to speculate on some of the issues the organisations from the examples may have faced. It is worth pausing here and spending a bit of time discussing. So I'm going to stop here. I'm going to ask, has anyone have any other useful techniques or any questions regarding anything I brought up in terms of those activities at this stage? I'm just looking at the chat window now. Andy, your last message is still echoing in there.
Guys, feel free to unmute. Even without previous experience running design sprints, feel free to ask any questions, because we are all here to learn a bit more.
All right, I'm gonna carry on. Here you go. It seems you got quiet mice there. This is the morning time. I've obviously had too much coffee. All right, finally, the build. This is where all your hard work as a group can go away, especially when working remotely. Stick to a plan. We've found that you can't go over the top with communication and planning. We conduct the build in a series of short mini sprints to maintain motivation and momentum. For example, every 90 minutes, everyone comes together and goes through progress and calls out any blockers, concerns, or confusion. It helps to refer back to the storyboard. With the build, don't default to easy. It is important to stress that the prototype isn't a commercial product. It is a device to learn and gather insights specifically from your test subjects. The more difficult and unknown aspects that you're looking to gather feedback on must be represented in some manner. Don't assume people will notice things unprompted. Add in a sense check early. We do this by breaking the build into two parts. The first part is to put the general construction of the prototype together, tight enough that it can convey the gist and any member of the group can talk through it. We then start the second part of the build by bringing in someone relevant to the challenge or senior stakeholders, often from problem framing, to review and give feedback. It gives the team the time to make changes before getting into the detail in preparation for testing. It is also a test to reveal how good they are at taking feedback and how they'll use it. Some resources that will help maintain communication and momentum to ensure that successful build of the prototype. First up, for all you agile people out there, a Kanban board. It is important to have visibility of the process throughout. We recommend Mural, Teams, or Trello. Keep it simple with names assigned to tasks, then columns that include to do, in progress, and done. Get the team to put their own name against tasks on the board. We've found it adds a high level of ownership and accountability if they do it in front of the group. If you're using Zoom, make use of the breakout rooms feature based on how the group is working together and their tasks. And then finally, make use of the parking lot or backlog. The parking lot is where you can capture the great but out of scope ideas to keep your eye on the prize. So I'm just going to pause. Has anyone got anything else to add, or they've got any questions? All right, I'm going to keep going. We're almost to the end. So some final thoughts. By keeping the three areas of the start, the switch, and the build front of mind during the program, we found that you will make the process of ideation to prototype a lot less stressful. So to summarize, at the start, tackle potential blockers early on to identify where and how the program could be derailed. Link it back to the broader cultural context of the organisation and existing rituals. Also, identify push points, for example, people, tools, and processes. Then a switch. Use the activities already in the sprint to delve deeper into insights and spark conversation. Consider the pace of the activities to allow people the opportunity to internalise and sense check. Not all people are sprinters. The design sprint moves at such velocity, people have trouble orientating. And finally, the build. Over communication is key. Too much is probably not enough. As a facilitator, you need to quickly find the balance between conduit and interrupter. Your goal as a facilitator is to manage accountability to the process, the learning objectives and sprint criteria, as well as each individual's commitment to the team. Make sure you bake into the process of the build informal feedback opportunities with relevant members of the external team, including senior stakeholders, to sense check. And finally, be direct in anything you wish to demonstrate to learn from. Don't rely on ambiguity. The success of the sprint relies on how effective the prototype is on conveying your big, bold ideas to the test subjects. That's everything. So with that in mind, I'm going to invite the group to ask questions before I copy and paste some of how you can get in touch with us. So I'm going to end the share here. Hugo?
All right, so I think I can start, but hopefully others will be brave enough to unmute themselves and ask a few questions as well. So what is your experience after running a design sprint? Because from my experience, many organizations, they invite you in, as a facilitator, we run the sprint, and then sometimes nothing happens, or it takes 8 to 12 weeks to continue the development of that prototype or that idea. So there's an opportunity, there's momentum, and then somehow after the sprint, people go back to business as usual. Does this happen to you as well in Australia, in your client base?
Yeah, well, I'm seeing the questions starting to come up now. So prior to COVID, we ran a couple of really interesting programs, and COVID pretty much disrupted everything. So in this current state of affairs, a lot of our organizations we work with went into crisis management and defense. But what we've found, so we recently ran a remote sprint, and by incorporating things like the 28 days later and the continual check-ins, and the way we run our debriefs is by breaking everything down into small manageable tasks and putting DIRs, directly independently responsible people, using some sort of RACI matrix. It continues conversation, as well as helping them how they showcase and remarket within the organisation. So yes and no, we can only do so much. You know, like we can only do so much. So,
all right, so we have a few questions here on the chat window. Stefan, do you find that working remotely enhances the prototype process or detracts?
Okay, do I find this is why we put these things in place. So Jake refers to prototyping. He says a really easy and default way to do prototyping is to just do the marketing around it, in which case, if you think about it, as a team, you'd just be putting together a brochure or a fake website as a positioning piece just to generate interest. Because if you go back to design thinking, it's all about desirability. So you don't have to really worry about feasibility or viability at this stage. You just want to prove it's actually a problem worth solving, and it's actually something the business should consider investing in. And it's like something that, you know, the risk is worth the reward because there's going to be an interest. So, you know, the default is marketing. We've come up with pilot programs that aren't actually a thing to show. It's just an example of something we could do, something we want to trial in real life. But so far surprisingly, we haven't had a problem.
Thank you. Another question here from João. Do you have any guidelines on breaking a big objective, monthly objective, for instance, into weekly sprints?
Okay, so the big objective into weekly sprints. So I'm just trying to think what the objective. What can you give me an example of an objective? Because weekly sprints kind of starts making me think about the agile production process.
Yeah, I also share the same point of view.
If I was thinking about that, going back up to problem framing, what we'd be doing is we'd be building the map of the overall process and we'd be zooming in. Now, as a result of conducting problem framing, we might identify a couple of different opportunities for either a sprint or test or some sort of growth hacking type opportunities or pilot programs, different things that feed in that that require different methods of different ways to tackle it. So that might be one way, and then you'd be assigning different teams in different parts of the organisation, and then organising how you mobilise and bring them together to decide, or based on user stories, which the agilists in here, I'm looking at Stephen, who's directly below me, would be able to validate where you start prioritising your user stories and that. But that kind of starts creeping into the agile world.
Yeah, that's the thing, because many people still don't probably understand where we should run a design sprint and where we go into a Kanban or a Scrum world.
Yeah.
So that's the thing, because when we are on the Scrum world, there's a product backlog. We know the things we need to do. This probably, we should run a design sprint before.
Okay, so we've
right?
so we've hacked the process. Hugo, we've hacked the process so much, and because we work with product teams that are really familiar with agile way of working, agile methods of working, we've started to bring the language in and incorporate some of their tools and process, because again, we want to make sure it fits, that there isn't such a like design sprint product process. We want to make sure it's seamless.
I like to call it getting the right idea. That's a design sprint. Then getting the idea right. That's the Scrum Agile world.
Yeah, well, we try and use some of the language there as well. We start bringing it in.
There's a cool question here. So when we run design sprints, there's energy in the room, right? People are engaged. We break down, incorporate silos. So what is your experience regarding this energy level? But when we run a remote sprint, this is one of the questions we can find here from Stefan.
Okay, so with the energy thing, I'm like a firecracker anyway. So I'm about to get a standing desk, so there's going to be no stopping me. Also, wireless headphones. Well, that's my charger. Is handy. It allows me to dance around the room. I've got a bag of tricks that are as long as my arm in regards to starting the meeting off a completely new way. So we've got heaps of icebreakers, and they involve people moving around. At more space, our goal is to immediately change the energy of the meeting. Everyone's so used to Zoom meetings where it's basically looking up your nose at the ceiling. We try and change the dimensions of that by changing people's names in their video boxes, by getting them talking, even meditation, just to make people mindful and present. Also being really conscious of other people, like shorter breaks and things like that. I'd rather work in a shorter sprint or shorter, like an hour and then break, than have people start to like nod off. So we've got quite a few tools.
Hi Dan, so Sana here.
Hello.
Hi. Let me turn on my video.
Yeah, turn on. You're a big rocket at the moment.
Hi. Hi.
Hello.
Hi, Hugo. So yeah, I've been now working on this design sprint. So I work for this telecommunication company in Pakistan. It's Telenor. And so I'm running the sprint between Telenor and Telenor Bank. So the Telenor Bank, they have this app, wallet app, for their consumers, and the product managers, they are like very particular about their product. And so at Telenor, we have this whole domain of digital products. We have news app, we got gaming apps, and we sell subscriptions to people. So the whole idea was that we wanted our subscriptions to be present in the wallet app, so people could buy the subscription through their mobile wallet account balance. And the product managers at the wallet app they're so particular. They hadn't ever sold any entertainment content or news content on their wallet app, that they feared that we don't know how our users would react to having content in EasyPaisa app. It's called, the brand name is EasyPaisa, because they are used to simply paying bills through their app, transferring money to other people. So like we are running the whole design sprint around that, because how it helped us is that we, we got to have all the questions from the talent or bank team, all their concerns, their doubts. For example, so we just like Jake tells you in the sprint book that you need to write down all the questions, the sprint questions, and your entire sprint focuses on those sprint questions, because your goal is that at the end of the sprint, you try to have answers to all the questions. So yeah, that really helped me, the sprint questions bit, to bring the focus that, okay, so these are the questions we need to answer. Like if users would be willing to buy entertainment content in the Easy Pesa app, if users would want to, if users would get confused, the other mobile operator users would get confused because it's not just for Telenor users. So, but I think the challenge I faced was that now it's like we are all working remotely, and it's so difficult to bring everyone together. So I was given like 2 days that I needed to conclude everything in just 2 days. So it was like not possible at all, because we had like 4 products that we wanted to embed into this Easy Pesa app. So what I did was that during the sketching part, where everybody is, ideating and sketching their solutions, I turned on my videos, I put my laptop on the ground, and I also sketched with people, just to give them the feel that I was sketching. Unlike how it's told in the remote sprint guide, that you need to tell people, okay, everybody can just go offline and do their sketching bit. So I found that it was important for me to get the entire team engaged. So this is how I went about engaging the team. That I put my laptop on the floor, I turned on my video, and I was sketching sitting on the floor, and everybody was there. They were seeing me that I'm sketching, so they were also sketching. And but I wonder how to sort of. So the challenge I faced that we couldn't do a good enough storyboarding at the end of the day. It was like partially complete, and then like still there are like so many back and forth, communication and conversations happening. Okay, what should be the flow? So many changes. So we are like not even doing the actual storyboarding that we decided in the sprint. So how do you go about tackling this challenge when you are working remotely?
So you're asking me, how do we get from solution sketch to storyboard?
Yeah, how do you like make everyone agree on, okay, so this is the thing that we've decided, and this is what we need to go about with. And because like I feel I shouldn't have started the sprint on this, and I should have just started with the prototype, because it's like such a, I feel like it's more of a design challenge, and it's not even trying to solve a problem.
Well, what's the business problem? So what are they trying to change? I mean, we could get into a whole strategic conversation about whether they could have solved it in a different way. But I guess the question really sounds like, it seems like you're having trouble once they've come up with a solution sketch that is actually something that's legible, that they all want to commit to and progress it into a prototype. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And it sounds like it's a feature in the app, not a whole new app.
No, it's not a whole new app. Yeah, it's a feature. It's yeah, you can call it a feature. I guess about having multiple new products within a microfinance app that never had such sort of products in the app. For example,
they're looking. So I know Hugo's most probably got lots of experience with this. So they're basically looking to incorporate a new feature in the app that already exists, and they've come up with an idea of it in a solution sketch, and then they can't. So I mean, it doesn't sound as steep as we're usually starting from nothing. I guess from my perspective, again, as I said in the Prezzo, I'd be starting very high level and getting them to do the storyboard hack. Now, if you're not familiar with the storyboard hack, AJ and Smart have it in a video. It's pretty simple. It's getting and like I said, we conduct storyboarding as a separate session in our remote design sprints. each workshop also only lasts for about 3 hours. We don't do 7-hour workshops remotely. People's brains would fall out their heads.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to sit here for 7 hours. And we use a storyboard hack really quickly just to get people to commit to a narrative. And once we've done that, we give people the time overnight to kind of think about it and decompress it. Now, do you have a decider?
Yeah. The product manager is the decider.
So you need to dress the decider up in some diva gear and get them to really show their smarts and start laying the smackdown.
He wasn't even there during the sketching, and then when we started wording, he wasn't there. And I think
that's the problem.
Yeah, that is a problem.
So the thing I think is the design sprint is a method to solve very big problems, not just to decide if a feature should go in the product or not. Take a look at Scrum, the Scrum methodology from Scrum Alliance. There are many methods that they recommend.
Yeah.
In particular, in the product owner space, there are many techniques to prioritize features, to try to understand the value of each feature. And to be honest, those techniques are okay. The design sprint is, okay, let's rethink the business model. Let's come up with a new service to target a new audience. Let's redesign something big. So the design sprint, the book itself, the famous blue book that Jake Knapp wrote, I think it's solving big problems, blah, 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 in 5 days.
New ideas.
Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, that's the thing. But the interesting thing about the design sprint, it contains probably 20 to 40 techniques, and sometimes one of these techniques can be used to solve a problem, but not the whole design sprint.
Yeah. Because that's where, Hugo, that's where I was kind of like, what is the business problem? What is the problem we're solving here? We just want to solve more things.
I felt like, it was, sorry, go ahead, Dan.
I was just going to say, but sometimes I imagine, Sana, you might not have that conversation with those stakeholders to be able to determine that.
Yeah. So I look at it from the angle, I felt that the main challenge was to bring two teams together, because one team was like totally reluctant. And so at Pakistan, how it works is that we, receive the things, the management tells us, okay, this needs to be done. Now they don't care about what value it would get for the consumer, right? They always look at the business value, that's it. So, and so when we sort of get the instructions, okay, that needs to be done, so we have to do it. So for me, the biggest challenge was to bring the teams together and, have them through the design bit that it can be done, and try to get the answer, that the doubts, answer the doubts that the talent or bank team had, that if their users would churn out or their users wouldn't like entertainment content in their app. So I think that it was a human challenge. It wasn't even a product challenge. Bring the teams together. So it was interesting.
You need to start measuring a few things. You need to measure the value out of a feature. And then it's all about stakeholder management and communication. Hey guys, did you know nobody's using this feature? So why are we developing features like this? It's about transparency, metrics. So I think someone, raised their hands.
Sorry. So I was just going to ask, because what it sounds like you're trying to do there is something that I've been considering. Is sometimes with agile teams, you need a way to break them out of a status quo, so they get into a mode of operation, and you need to regenerate the fresh ideas. So yes, design sprints are about solving big problems, but sometimes that big problem is staleness. And I just wondered if you've had any experience, maybe running a short design sprint type, or a compressed thing, just to get some fresh ideas into teams and things like that.
Oh, this is cool. We just point the finger and Dan, you are our special guest. So
let me unmute. So shorter sprints, yeah. So we ran like a 3-day sprint, and oh my gosh, you should have seen they looked like, you know, that expression of rabbit in headlights. For 3 days they came. This was in person. We gave them the same briefing, and it wasn't on a product, it was on a business model. And we used really interesting, which we've been playing with, is using the theory of constraints. So we split them up into 2 teams and got them like with one constraint and the other constraint. And it was almost like a 3-day hackathon. First day was all about really understanding and defining and splitting those teams up. The next day was around building, and we pretty much did, I think we did about a day build, maybe less. And at the end of the day, we had that, you know, I mentioned we split the build into 2. Well, we found that in real life, it works really well. We got that sense check. They came in, they pushed the last bit out in the morning, and then we just ran four tests. I know the book says 5, but what we found is 4's enough. By the end of the sprint, like people start is, actually, you can have a whole separate talk on managing people throughout the day. Now, I know some companies actually just do the first day and then just take it away and design it, test it, and then give it back, which is great. But I guess from the beginning, we've liked to keep the teams involved. And to be honest with you, it gets very repetitive for them. So we are constantly looking for ways to evolve the testing process, and 4 to us is about enough.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, Steve?
Yeah.
So, yeah, we have run it short, and it really like messes people up.
Yeah, but that can be a topic for a new session: innovation culture, changing the culture and the mindset in all of that. Any more questions? I don't think so. Okay, so I think we are running out of time. Dan, any final considerations you want to share with us?
Well, I've shared some of our details in the chat. Some final problem framing is so important. Also, respect the people in the room. Any more than 3 hours, 4 hours max, hour breaks, let people turn off. We've written a whole remote charter of behaviours, expected behaviours, and we give them to people. We run through them every session, so they know what the expectations are and they know what they're going to get in the sprint and the way we behave. It just, that playbook just kind of mitigates all those kind of bad things, you know, like eating celery in the microphone and things like that. You know, just try and do as best as you can to get people through the process and keep each remote stage as super intentional as possible. If you can get through one activity, for example, the sprint criteria in 1, the design in the 2nd, the critique in the 3rd, the prototype in the storyboard in the 4th, done, that's perfect. Don't try and do too much, cram too much in a remote session.
Wow, this was really, really valuable. So thanks, Dan, for joining the Innovation Cafe today.
Thanks,
it was a pleasure, and thank you all of you as well. And tomorrow we have another session, 6 p.m. London time. We are going to talk about how a designer can become an entrepreneur. So our guest will explain probably what she did. I think it's a journey from design thinking to entrepreneurship. And don't forget to follow us on YouTube as well as on our website. Thank you all. It was a pleasure to host another session. Thanks, Dan. Take care. Bye.